How far do our constitutional rights extend, especially in the pursuit of justice? And today we're examining the ongoing Idaho 4 case in Bryan Kohberger's trial, where the state claims Ann Taylor pushes the boundaries of what she's allowed to do, while Ann Taylor makes the statement that she's just trying to poll potential jurors to ensure her client gets a fair trial. But with the judge's order restricting communication, we're left wondering two things. Who's really causing the delay here? And are we sacrificing transparency for the sake of procedural rigidity? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. And if an open conversation is something you prefer, then this is the place for you. Welcome to The Point, so let's talk about it.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Does it not seem like our constitutional rights are being stripped away little by little on a daily basis? And what are our constitutional rights when it comes to trials? We know with certainty we have a right to a fair and impartial jury, correct? And you really only have two ways to ensure a jury is going to be fair and unbiased. You either A, do a poll or send out a questionnaire, which is what Ann Taylor has done, or you find out right before the trial through the voir dire process. And if you like what we're doing so far, hit the like button down below, because it seems Ann Taylor is in the middle of her preparations for her argument over her motion for a change of venue. So does she have a right to do this? Well, the short answer, despite what people will tell you, is yes. Conducting a poll or sending out a questionnaire is nothing new. It's fairly common, and it happens in all sorts of areas where a high-profile case is being heard. And despite headlines like this, there is absolutely nothing nefarious one way or the other with her doing what she's doing. But the state is fired back, and Bill Thompson's making the claim that she's leaking information about this trial to the public. But here's the legitimate truth to all this. Now, can Ann Taylor leak information about the trial to the public? Absolutely not. That is 100% the truth. And does someone knowing information about this particular trial exclude them from becoming a juror? Once again, the short answer is no to that also. But if she's phrasing her questions to ask if somebody has heard a specific piece of information and they have developed a bias one way or the other, can she do that? Absolutely. That is well within her rights as a defense attorney to ensure that these potential jurors that have knowledge of this case have no bias whatsoever. A good example of that would be take your favorite content creator. Now, some of them have drawn a line in the sand and have insisted that Bryan Kohberger is guilty. Regardless of what else they hear, they believe he's guilty. Now, that's an individual who has knowledge of the case and has a bias. That person wouldn't be allowed to be a juror. Then you have individuals on this platform who have made the case that he is innocent, they believe he's innocent, and nothing's going to change their mind. Those individuals also have a bias, so therefore they wouldn't allowed to be a potential juror either. And then you have those individuals who sit in the middle. Now, they may see suspicion, but they may have questions. And they need to see more evidence to make a determination one way or the other. That is an example of a person who may have knowledge of the trial, but they haven't formed an opinion as of now. And they're not going to form an opinion until they hear both sides of the argument. That is an example of a very good potential juror, somebody who's objective. Whether they have knowledge of what's going on with this trial has no bearing on it whatsoever. That is just the truth. And if anybody's saying anything other than that, they're absolutely lying to you. You can have knowledge of a case. As long as you don't have bias, you can be considered a juror. But to the meat and potatoes, are we sacrificing transparency for the sake of procedural rigidity? My answer at this point would be absolutely 100% yes. When it comes to anything pertaining to what Bryan Kohberger or his defense team wants to do. And here's what I mean about that before you go on and say I'm being biased. Because we had this gag order in place. That gag order was supposed to protect Bryan Kohberger's constitutional rights and ensure he got a fair trial. But I would ask y'all a question. How many anonymous leaks have you heard since Bryan Kohberger was named a suspect?
Dozens, if not hundreds. It's so many I can't tell you.
And of all those anonymous leaks, how many times have you heard somebody got punished or somebody got reprimanded? Based off everything I have read, I have found no reports that anybody leaking information to the public has been charged or held accountable. So yes, in my own personal opinion, as of now, we are absolutely sacrificing transparency for the sake of procedural rigidity when it comes to Bryan Kohberger and Bryan Kohberger only. But it seems right now that everybody else involved with this case has the absolute right to 100% leak whatever they want, however many times they want, as long as they do it anonymously. And I don't personally think that that benefits anybody, regardless of your point of view, whether you believe he did it or believe he didn't, or you're in the middle. Leaking information benefits nobody. That's just a fact. And we can all agree that the facts are the facts at the end of the day. And here's another fact for you. The population of Idaho is only a little over 40,000 people. That's not very large in the grand scheme of things, so that jury pool's going to be pretty small when you look at it. And if what the state is saying is true, that they have a limited window in which they can hold this trial without interfering with everybody else, then it just makes sense to move it on those grounds alone. I do personally believe, given the size of Idaho and this limited window in which they can hold a trial, that eventually at some point down the road they will do a change of venue. I do personally believe it needs to happen. But the constant pushback from the state towards Bryan Kohberger is the exact reason why I don't believe this motion will go through right now. And when you talk about the state issuing this order to stop all communication with these potential jurors, who's really causing the delay at this point? Now, some in the media have said that Ann Taylor filing all these motions is the exact reason we're dealing with this delay. They've made the case that her trying to get this grand jury indictment overturned was an absolute waste of time. Now, while we all believe that it probably wasn't going to go through, but after doing a little bit of digging, I have also found out that it is almost considered a norm for a defense attorney to file that motion. It's almost a standard practice at this point. So is it a legitimate waste of time? Not necessarily when you consider the fact that it is almost expected that you file that motion. But in terms of eliminating a future delay, doesn't it make more sense that you allow Ann Taylor to get these answers right now rather than right before the trial? And if the primary goal of everybody is to have this thing heard as soon as possible, wouldn't a change of venue make sense anyways? If you move it to another area, you have a much larger jury pool to sample from. You would also have a lot more flexibility on when you can start this trial date. And if the state is so concerned about getting closure for these victims' families, they should want the ability to have this trial start as soon as possible rather than waiting for some time in the summer. And if it doesn't happen the summer of next year, are we going to wait till the summer of the year after that? What sense does it make for Bill Thompson to get in front of the judge and make the statement, it is absolutely crucial for those victims' families to get closure as soon as possible, when he is setting a real strict window on when they can hold that trial in Idaho? I understand that that community has the right to hold that trial there because it happened there. But the fact remains, given the size of that jury pool and this limited window, it is not a benefit to anybody to have this trial in Idaho. But another thing within this recent order is the fact that the state knew Ann Taylor was doing this. They were well aware that she was reaching out to potential jurors to figure out where they were and where they are within this particular case. This is nothing new. For them to all of a sudden act like they have a huge problem with her asking a couple of questions is completely ridiculous in my own opinion. They were well aware of this, and they've been aware for some time. So for them to disagree with what Ann Taylor's doing is doing nothing but causing another delay. Now, nobody could help the rate at which the evidence was necessarily coming into the state and getting sent over to the defense. When you have an investigation that involves local, state, and federal authorities, you will have to expect some delays. And I'm not faulting anybody for that at this particular moment. But what I can say, for Bill Thompson to make another argument as if she's doing something so grossly unconstitutional that she has to stop right now, when he has not at any time made any case to go after anybody who's been leaking all this crap, if it's true, is absolutely ridiculous. So to all y'all right now, who's legitimately stalling here? Who's causing these delays? If everything Ann Taylor's trying to do is going to be met with resistance, who's really causing these delays? If you see any of these things differently, you can let me know down in the comments below. If you want to hear my theory on the possibility of more than one suspect, look at this playlist right here. Other than that, y'all be safe now.